And the ego thing came in there. The lady that I thought was hugging me, hugged me for about 15 minutes. You guys know how that works. And she's crying. And she said something that affected me pretty strongly. She said, and believe me, this isn't true. She said, "You're the most amazing man I ever met." And I pushed her back and I said, "You know what, I'm not." I said, "I'm a schmuck. That's what I am." I said, and this is how my book got its title, by the way. I have no idea how I came up with that line. The boss was helping me. I said, when somebody builds you a house, you don't thank the hammer, you thank the carpenter. I said, I'm just the hammer. I happen to work for the most famous carpenter in history. And that's why I named my book that, because I thought, wow, that was clever. But it wasn't me coming up with it, you know what I mean? But yeah, you keep the ego out of it. But that's a case where the client actually was the spirit. And we did something good. We didn't chase a demon away, but the client was the spirit. And that makes me happy all the time when I think about it.
That's a beautiful story, thank you. Appreciate it.
Next question. Come on, someone has a question. All right.
Man in front.
Peer pressure.
What is the worst case you've ever worked on?
That's a good one. So if you didn't hear me ask what was the worst case we worked on, well, I would say the worst case that I worked on, and the case that still follows me to this day, I don't mean it in that sense, would be my first absolute possession case. And when I say absolute possession case, I mean that it was brought to me by an actual legitimate psychologist that's been in psychology for over 20 years. And when a psychologist calls you, and I work with them all the time because that is what the Catholic Church requests, a Catholic psychological evaluation before we get involved in any sense. But the biggest thing is when a psychologist calls you instead of us calling them. It's kind of daunting, especially if it was early on in doing this. So a psychologist calls me and says, "I believe that there's something that is unworldly, something that's not in the DSM-5. And for people that don't know what the DSM-5 book is, it's a book that psychologists use and therapists use for disorders. And if you read it, you're going to think you're crazy. But so nothing in that book could correlate to what this person was going through. And the hardest and most difficult thing is, and I think it really changed me as a person and really kind of drove me to where I am wearing this collar to this day, and that's why I say it's followed me to this day, is when I seen that person, and you know, of course you watch The Exorcist, you watch The Rite, you watch all these movies and all these television shows that we talk about, you expect the pea soup with the head spinning and levitation and all this going crazy, but it was as simple as this person speaking a different language. And of course, you know, people talk about speaking in tongues, right? So basically, to nullify the misconception about that, speaking in tongues means basically speaking in a language that you do not know. So if you speak English, or you start speaking Spanish, or you start speaking another language that you do not have any clear identification of, that's speaking in tongues. That's a big misconception, but this person is actually speaking in Latin and actually switched to Aramaic. And the reason that we know that is because we got a university involved, a professor actually decoded what the person was saying. But the biggest thing is when I was sitting across from this individual and talking to them and talking to them about God, something crazy happened. And I think this is something that when everybody sees it, and of course Dave and Jeff can talk about their experiences, but the first time I've seen somebody's eyes go jet black and the face start deforming. Like when I mean deforming, I don't mean like I meant like starting to triangulate at the jawbone and everything. And when he turned, because it was a transient possession, that means the demonic comes and goes. When he went in that transient state, he charged. And he threw a table at me, like a legitimate table, and everything went flying. Two big guys, about almost 400 pounds, and I mean they're big guys, like some of the biggest guys I've ever met in my life, went charging. And this guy that was under this transient possession was probably 22 years old, and not big at all, and he was able to overpower them. And we can talk about adrenaline, but to take two guys that are nearly 400 pounds and manhandle them, and then still grab onto me, I'm not gonna lie, it was the scariest thing I've ever seen. But the chemical imbalances in our head is either fight or flight. My body was telling me, get the hell out of there, James. But I stayed. And the funniest thing about that moment, which is not scary, I Captain Morgan that table and did what I had to do. And I mean Captain Morgan, I Captain Morgan that table with the leg, by the way.
I've had cases where 100-pound women are throwing around 7 of us trying to hold her down. I've seen all different kinds of body and facial changes, eyes changing, all that stuff. But I think that the scariest case was a guy that was one of the full-blown possessions because he summoned it and he loved it. His girlfriend's the one who called us. You know, he just and he flaunted that. We had given him a cross that was a St. Benedict cross with exorcism blessing on it. He would constantly twirl it whenever we were talking to him. And he would go in and out. You'd be talking to him, then you'd be talking to it, back and forth. But when we got involved, I think over a period of time, we did probably 3 sets of exorcisms on him with 3 different priests or clergy. The one priest that was on my team, he went and did an exorcism, not successful, but he said he needed to give him confession afterwards. Now, confession is solemn and it can't be done with an audience. So I figured out, he knows what he's doing. I wouldn't do that, but he wants to go do that. So he went in another room with the guy, gave him confession, came out, everything was fine. We all went to the diner afterwards. Normal case. The next day, I find out this priest of 11 years no longer believes in God. Called his bishop and told him where to go and what to do with it. And left the priesthood completely. No faith anymore whatsoever. So what did this guy tell the priest to make him change that? And that was terrifying because I was still on the case. So I'm next in line. So when it was my turn to do the exorcism, I brought in another priest to do it with me. Because I wasn't going to be alone in a room with him, but I wasn't even going to attempt an exorcism by myself. That was still unsuccessful, but that was like staring at a loaded gun the entire time, waiting for the bullet to fire. And that doesn't sound as scary as the physical stuff. The mental things like that are more terrifying to me. I mean, after you see a few, people, their eyes roll back and change, it's kind of, for us, it's kind of like the same thing. I've been there, done that. You're gonna have to do a little better than that. But what he did by changing that priest's mind about God and his whole faith, it was terrifying.
Well, we both know it wasn't him that was saying it. It was somebody about a millennia old that was saying it. See, all the angels were created at the same time. When we die, we don't become angels or demons like on Supernatural. That's just not the way it works. They're a whole different race. They're a whole different creature. And God created all the angels at the same time. When the break happened and a third of them went with Satan, things changed. And they don't like us. I don't think they like anybody. But yeah, so with the ancient knowledge and with the abilities that they have to destroy someone who completely devotes his life to God and faith, that seems like it would be hard, but when you have people that are like toddlers to them, which is what we are, which is why we don't rely on our own ability, it can happen. And that is a horrible shame. That's horrible. I think my scariest case, and I don't get scared out of them anymore. The only thing that scares me is my temper. I get angry. And the bad guys like you angry. So I have to back off a second and get control of my temper. Because I've been there. I've had cases, like you say, the eyes go black. I've had the girl's eyes went burgundy. And a girl that probably weighed 97 pounds soaking wet took that big mitt and crushed it. And smiled at me and said, "I'm not going anywhere." And I looked at her and you have to, even if you're terrified, and nobody's fooling anybody, they're reading what you're thinking.
Game face.
Yeah, you're like, you know you are. You know you are. It's just a matter of time. You're just not going to make this easy for me, are you? when you see the eyes go burgundy, they go black, and like you say, the face starts to change. That is, especially at first, is terrifying. But because I'm fortunate enough, and it sounds crazy to say fortunate enough, I'm fortunate enough that these things faced me face to face in my own home, so that I threw up all over myself and passed out. You start to build a resistance to it, because it's not what you're doing, it's what the guy in charge is doing, who's getting you ready to do this for the rest of your life. It's worth it, though. There was a girl named Mary, and I won't say any of the rest of her name, and she lived up Punxsutawney way. And she was horrible, horrible. Her father called me, and he was pretty old. And I took her to be mid-50s, bent over, her eyes are all sunken in, cheeks all, you guys know, hair's like wheat straw. She's walking a little bent over, and I'm thinking, wow, this girl's in bad shape for a girl in her 50s. She's in bad shape. And it was a terrifying experience, and I had to get a hold of myself. But you know what? 2 weeks later, I went back to see her. I had to wait till my hand healed up. I was telling you, I keep those gloves in there just because of that. I had to wait till my hand healed up. I didn't want her to see it. I went back. She said, I want you to meet my sister before I left. And I said, no, I ain't ready for that. And she said, no, it's my younger sister. She has been terrified for me. And when she finds out that this is all taken care of, she's just going to want to meet you. I said, okay. She said, well, she lives, where the heck did she live? Anyway, it was like a 3-hour drive. So I get there 2 weeks later, I walk up the sidewalk, the door slams open. And this young girl, probably 30-ish, 30, she comes running out there. She's about 20 pounds heavier than her sister. Beautiful dark hair, eyes are sparkling, she's good looking. She runs out and jumps off the porch, and she wrapped her arms and legs around me, and she said, you're Jeff, and she kissed me on the cheek, and I said, well, I get a greeting like this every time I come here. It's worth a 3-hour drive, isn't it? And she laughed a little bit. I said, where's your sister? And she said, my sister's not here. I said, oh no. I said, that was the whole idea. I said, that's why I came back to check on her. I'm happy to meet you, but I wanted to see Mary. And she said, Jeff. I said, what? She said, I'm Mary. And I said, I know you're not supposed to ask this question, but how old are you? She said, I'm 33. How can you not go out the next time? I'm sure you guys have had cases that restore your faith and make you want to do this again and again and again, even though if you put it on a scale from 1 to suck, it's like suck times 5, but you still do it.
I think Lorraine Warren had summed it up the best when she said that every time you do this, it takes a little bit of something away from you. So that's kind of what it feels like. Every time you, even if it's successful or not, it's like a little piece is gone. You've just left that like on the field.
We're running out of time. We started a little bit late. We'll take one more question, or we can continue going as long as you guys love it.
Until they throw us out. What the heck?
Who is the next question?
Mr. Kenna comes in the back and starts telling us he's got to set up his stuff.
No more questions?
I have 2 more.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yes, Kat, they're real.
You asked the good questions too.
I know that y'all have done this, some of y'all for decades and some of y'all for maybe a decade now. But seriously, when you describe the things that you come up against, it's overwhelming to those of us who are doing the investigative work, and I have concern about coming across this. We've talked about that. And yet you're able to do it. I'm a woman of faith, and I am a woman of very strong faith, but I'm still not comfortable feeling, I don't feel like this is what I was called to do, although I tried. And how did you actually, in the course of, because I know that you started Shadowlands, and everybody, you were like the original ghost hunting experiencing page. and people were drawn to that in droves, and you still do what you do. Did you know, at what point did you know that this really is it? This is what your calling is. You know you're going to be okay through it, and you're still going out.
The last thing I wanted to do was this. I fought it and fought it. We would refer cases out to other groups whenever we came across something, because we realized it's out of our league. I didn't want anything to do with it. And then slowly groups just started fading away. They weren't doing it. People just get burned out in this and just can't do it for long periods of time. And I would call, John and Debbie and Larry Elwood. They were a little further north, but I would have them involved with cases. And then a couple times, John would go, "Come on, meet me here." And I would go with him, strictly to observe. Then I'd start going, Adam Bly would say, "Hey, come out with a case with me." And I'd start out by just walking around behind him, holding the incense censer, handing him salt and stuff. And slowly, not even realizing, I went from being like the altar boy and filming it to now I'm in the picture. I'm helping him with the person. I'm holding the prayers. Now I'm holding a relic on the person. Now I'm saying the prayers with them. This wasn't a conscious decision. And I didn't realize till I was trying not even get to the minor leagues. I look back and I'm like in AAA now. It's like, how the hell did this happen? How did they get here? And that's when you realize, like, the phone rang, I picked it up, I just didn't know it was on the other end. It was too late to hang up. Like, it was that call. It's like, I gotta do this. Now the other part of it, how do I know this is, I'm still terrified every time I go. Every time I get a case, I'm not only terrified of what I might face, only because you can't unsee or unexperience what happens. And that's, I don't know. I know, and me and Jim, we talked about this at the last panel. I go to a therapist. I go to a therapist and she's got her master's degree in theology. So most of the discussions are about the cases I'm dealing with. Because I need to talk to someone who can understand. Or I'll call, I used to call, probably burn John's ears, calling him, just running down things, and he would be patient, listen to me, or calling other people. But I don't think you ever get used to it, and you ever say, like, wow, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You know you're supposed to be doing it, but you still got that voice in the back of your head screaming, hey, idiot, you're mentally ill, stop it, because you shouldn't be doing this stuff, you're insane. You just gotta keep moving forward, because I know for me at least, I guess you guys do, it's not really a choice. It's something we have to do.
Not a choice at all.
No, definitely not. And I have a different story than Dave. Of course, we all have our different stories. That's the beautiful thing of life. And I more so didn't get into a choice as either, but was more so because of the trials and tribulations I had as a child. I'll be very blunt and very upfront. I don't talk about it a lot, but when I was a child, my father left me on the side of a street in front of the courthouse and just left me there. And that day burnt something into me about trying to figure out what God is, who God is, why would God do this. And that was a little bit of a portion of why I do what I do nowadays. I didn't necessarily choose it, but in some ways, what was thrown at me as a child and throughout life is what brought me here. When I got into the paranormal, because of that question, what is God? Because if you ask what God is, you have to look at all the other aspects of it. And that, of course, what happens when you die. Because when I was a child, I didn't want to live because of that. I didn't want to be thrown away like, a piece of meat. And that's what I felt like. So, with that travels of investigating, I came across a case when I started doing residential cases. And the one thing they said to me is, we're scared. Can you do more than just validate that there's something here? And I was like, I can't. I don't know how. It's not my ability. And unfortunately, I became tech manager of Beyond the Veil Paranormal with a man called Carl Johnson. If you don't know who Carl Johnson is, he's a phenomenal man, very intelligent, and his brother Keith and his wife Sandra Johnson are also very intelligent people. And I had the ability to start doing cases, just like how Dave did with John and other members of clergy and members of this field. And it really just pulled me in. I think the biggest thing, of course, that you really dictates to understand if you're called to do this or chosen. Of course, we're not like Neo in the Matrix or anything like that. That'd be kind of cool. Could you imagine doing that? But it was the fact that when I first, it wasn't even demonic, the first negative case that I ever dealt with, and seeing the people cry and wither away in their house, kind of really hit me hard. And I see Carl talk to them. And of course, Carl is just like Jeff, very, very funny, and has that kind of sense of humor with him. And that's really what pulled me in more so than anything. And seeing what I seen, because it was a very negative case, even though it was not demonic. Like I brought up earlier, you have two chemical reactions in your brain, fight or flight. And I stood there that day and I fought alongside Carl and the team. And I knew, as crazy as it was, that maybe I was meant to do this, and I kept going on cases until it got to this point. Like Dave says, I do see a therapist every time I deal with the case, because guess what? We have to decommission ourselves. So I'll talk to a priest and and talk to what's going on. But it's a crazy step, from where it happened to where it is now. And I take a lot of people on cases with me, because people want to have a brush with evil, which is insane to me. And 9 out of 10 times people flee, and will never either do the paranormal again or do those kind of cases. It's not meant for everybody. And when it's not that we're special, but there is certain people out there that are meant to do the work that we do.
I think so too. I think he draws us in. I think he might even have us picked out a long time before we even show up. I've had people ask me, well, how we do this? How did you do this? How did you save my daughter from what was happening to her? How did you do that? And it's like, wait a minute, I didn't do it. I was standing here, I was saying the right words, I was giving the right kind of confidence, I was giving the right kind of faith in sharing that. But I didn't do anything, I was just there. The person that did it is always there. And he's the one that picked us to do this. And she said, but that would be like a miracle. And I said, you hit it right on the head. We deal in the miraculous every time we deal with one of these people. Miracles, they're not just old things in the Bible. They're happening right now. I mean, we're sitting here having a talk and somebody is out there right now doing what we do. And we deal in the miraculous every freaking day. And so do the others. We're not alone in this. It's kind of a small community, but there are people out there I haven't met. You mentioned Adam Bly. Adam Bly is one of the most interesting and most influential people I've ever met. I spent 45 minutes with him and it changed my perspective. The man's amazing. But even Adam Bly falls. He falls from grace, just like all of us. Sometimes it gets to be too much. And believe me, we do. It gets to be way too much. My dear friend Bill Bean is like, Bill, stop. Give yourself some time to recover. Because he's out killing himself doing this. And that was one of the things that Adam made clear to me when we went to DraculaCon. And I was just delighted to speak to that big sucker. And he explained a few things. He's a demonologist. He's on the International Board of Exorcists as a trainer. The guy's amazing.
He teaches exorcists demonology.
And that was at the time just before the cusp of Islam.
And he was having trouble in between there. He was down in the pits when we saw him.
Well, I quit 2 years. I know Zach has stopped for 3. Everyone has their breaking point and you need to recover. Some people get back up and go to it. I know a lot of people, the first person that trained me.
I've been trying to quit for years.
The first person that trained me, he had a total breakdown. I won't even talk about anything paranormal. Once in a while I get like a phone call or an email saying hi, and
that's about the extent of our conversation. Because somewhere we're gonna go down that path, and he doesn't want to go anywhere near that.
You get nervous when you get that email?
So yeah, I'm waiting for that call, you know, it's like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm stubborn. Yeah, I know, hard to believe, I'm stubborn. The only reason I sleep on my bed is because I spent a whole lot of money on it. And I knew I wouldn't do it if I didn't do it. My standard sleep pattern is maybe 2 to 3 hours a night. And it's been that way for years. Lately it's been getting a little better. Lately it's getting a little better. But just something this gentleman said right here, you can't unsee it. You can't unexperience it. It keeps you awake. And it's not the fear. The fear that I have is that somebody else is out there dealing with it right now, and I'm laying here in this bed doing nothing to help. You know, you do feel that strong responsibility.
I would say the biggest reason that I continue doing it, and like we just said, we all have taken a break, is even though we're not necessarily the people that are invoking, you know, we are invoking God's working through us, but you know, the days that I have hard times and the days that we have our hard times, and I think it's trials and tribulations that we went through in life that is the reason that we are here. But it's also the times that when you leave and you see a person, you first enter that house and they're crying, they're sad, and you leave and they're smiling, they're happy, and they're laughing. Those are the moments that keep me going doing this. It's the moments that make me enjoy life and understand that love is amazing, and that is the reason I do it, and that's the reason I won't stop. Because of those people that smile and can enjoy living in their house again.
I was gonna say I do it for the women and the money, but.
The women and the money, good grief.
And the TV show that I'm gonna get.
Oh yeah.
Fame and fortune.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, if you saw my fleet of cars.
When you were talking, something popped in my head. This made me, but I was laughing to myself. This is kind of disturbing in its own way. People are always saying they want to see things. They want to see this. They want to experience it. Okay. No, you don't. You have no idea how, to us, I mean, it's beyond insane and crazy. If there's a category for that, where you're at the total extreme, open that door and go through beyond that, that's where that statement sounds like to us, because you have no idea what you're asking. Even people who are just in the paranormal field want to see ghosts. You don't know what you're going to see. Sometimes that's not a ghost. It's something more. And you can't control when that's going to happen. And so be careful what you wish for, because sometimes it comes true. And, you know, then you're going to be calling us, and that's not a good situation to be in.
I'll tell you what, I would like to have the underwear concession for those people, because, you know, selling lots of those, because they got to change your shorts. They do.
Like I said, 9 out of 10 times if I do bring somebody, they're no longer part of this field. It's insightful, you know?
You know, you get used to it. I've been slapped in the pitch black dark, slapped and scratched and kicked and shoved and forget about my dating. No, but those things have happened to all of us. And when you become desensitized to it, that's scary.
That's why the classes that I give on demonology, I'm kind of trying to, I lure in the people who are fanatics and think they want to get into this, in the hopes that I'm going to scare the shit out of them enough that
Amen.
They never think about this again. That is the whole focus of the entire class. Now, people who may be actually going to do this stuff and are doing it for the right reason, they're going to learn throughout the class. But it is geared to be that extreme. I now start my class with, I thought about it for a long time and I hesitated, but I decided there's too many people trying to get into this for the wrong reasons or just thrill seekers. I start the class now with 2 short videos of a girl that is being possessed at the moment. And I had the hands up first, who wants to do this, play the videos for them, which is maybe a minute and a half total, then ask the question again. No hands went up. These people were, the blood drained from their faces. I got no questions through that whole class. It was very quiet because they were listening to everything I said, just focusing on that, but they couldn't get that video out of their head. So I thought at the end, job well done.
Yeah.
Because there's no junior demonologist running out, printing up their business cards, you know, going out and doing this the next day.
Junior demonologist, I love it.
They took a class from me, and then they stayed at the Holiday Inn Express that night, and they're good to
Wow.
go.
Yeah, they know now.
Before we end it, because we're way past our time, just remember, guys, that if you think you know what you know, we don't always know what we know, if that makes sense to people. You know, knowledge is power, but if you are over your head, make sure to contact somebody else. The more people that you have in the boat, the better it is. It's always going to work that way. So don't ever be the hero because you're not. That's how I want to end it.